Today I give Southbound another test drive. Welcome to Rotted, review of the day, and today we're going to be taking a look at the 2015 movie Southbound. This is a spoiler-free review, as always, and as always, we're going to have a separate deep dive discussion spoiler-filled video also coming out the same day. Now, this is the first movie that I have reviewed for the Rotted channel that I have seen the movie previously. Every other film on here that I've reviewed, I had watched just prior to writing and recording the review for it. This one I have seen once before, about a year and a half prior, and I was very surprised by it. I knew nothing about it. I had never heard of it. I had never heard of anyone that had heard of it. And when I watched it all the way through and I got through the end credits, it stuck with me and it kept rattling around in my brain and I couldn't let it go. I had to theorize. I had to do more research and the intentions of the filmmakers, and I love it when a movie sticks with me like that, when I'm not just satisfied clicking it off and giving it 5 minutes of thought and moving on with my day, when it really just does rattle around in my brain and I can't get rid of it. And that doesn't happen very often. The Darren Aronofsky movie Mother did that fairly recently, but Southbound was a true blue horror film that did that, as well as also being an anthology movie. And I love anthology horror. I don't think we see enough of that these days. The two most notable ones I can think of in most recent times are this movie and A Christmas Horror Story. And I love that one too, but that's on a totally different level than what Southbound was trying to do. So most of the meat of this review is actually going to be happening in the deep dive discussion, just because it being an anthology and it being a movie that needs, in my opinion, a level of reflection. The real heart of what makes Southbound great does come from needing to discuss it, reading between the lines and really digging in. And I'm not going to be able to do that on a spoiler-free review video. Regardless, I am going to do my best to provide as much information as I can to the people that are wanting to possibly watch this movie and are kind of on the fence about whether or not they should. A quick answer on that is, I think you absolutely should. But the longer answer, the more proper review, is as follows. So the categories that we're going to be doing, as always, are 5 different categories, and each one is going to be worth up to 20 points for a total possible score of up to 100 points. Now, the plot of this, again, this is where I have to really kind of watch where I'm going with this. It being an anthology, there are 5 different stories being told that are somewhat loosely tied together. And to go into the plot of each one would, I think, diminish the impact the film overall has. So I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm just going to talk about the theme that is interwoven between all of them. Most anthology horror does have a centralized theme. A grandpa telling, reading from a book of stories to his grandson or something like that. Something that binds all the stories together in one cohesive package that they can put into a film. Otherwise, it's just a loose jumble of short films. And Southbound's interwoven connectiveness, it doesn't have a central point like that. It simply moves from one to the other with more of a centralized theme, and that centralized theme is taking place in a unidentified desert on an unidentified road with an ill-defined end, and everything is run down. Everything is as you would expect on the backest of back road Utah kind of situations, and the small towns and the pit stops and so forth that one character might get into trouble and as his story is wrapping up, it's almost like a tag team wrestling match. You know, there's a nod and a handshake moves on to the next character and the next storyline until 5 are completed and the movie wraps. It goes a lot further than that. It goes quite a bit further than that in the subtext area. And that really, for me, like I said earlier, is where the meat of it is where the subtext, what is actually going on, what this setting is supposed to represent, what these people are actually going through, how those stories tie together even more closely than, at first glance might appear. All of this is worthy of discussion and worthy of introspection. And for that reason, and how much that stuck with me, I went ahead and gave the plot and subtext 16 points. I think I actually kind of want to take this moment to address the fact that no movie has hit 20 points, in any category so far. And I will say right up front that if that does happen, I'm going to be somewhat astounded. When I think of 20, I think of absolute perfection. It's obviously a goal to strive for, but whether or not it's attained, I can't think of any movie that would reach 20 points in any of the categories that has been made yet. It is the absolute gold standard marker in which what I would consider to be, if a movie hit all 5 categories and 20 points and got the full 100 points, to me that is the point in which everybody should shut off their cameras and just stop trying, because it has been met. The end goal of cinema has been reached. I don't think that is possible. But just so you know where my goalposts are. So 16 out of 20, considering that, is very, very respectable. It's very above average. I did enjoy this a lot. But moving on. Intent. Intent on this one. This was done by, I believe, the same directors, the same idea men behind the VHS, at least the first movie. And I could kind of see where they were going with it. I mean, that was obviously another anthology horror film, which I thought had some good parts, had some bad parts. There were definitely 1 or 2 duds thrown in there. I thought the interwoven storyline between all of them was better than any of the shorts running through it. But regardless, it seems like they took the anthology horror idea that they had with the first VHS and wanted to continue with that, continue with the same people, and flesh out this other different idea in a really unique and scary way. So they had the central theme, the feel of it, the notion, and they let the directors go out on their own and do what they did. And sometimes that can result in very the pieces don't fit the overall puzzle, but in this case it did. So if the intention was to make a directors going off on their own and doing what they do, but bringing it all together, bringing it all home into a cohesive movie, I thought that they succeeded. So 16 out of 20 points for that one. The acting, I thought, was spectacular. There is, I have the listing of the sequences that they had there. There was Jailbreak, Siren, The Way Out, The Way In, and The Accident. And none of those are really going to make much of a impact until you've seen the movie. But I will say that the principal actor in The Accident, I thought, did a phenomenal job. The main antagonists in Siren were terribly unnerving, and I loved it. Honestly, just solid performances the whole way through. I couldn't think of anybody that, phoned it in, was overacting, clearly couldn't remember lines, anything like that. Everybody in there I thought gave a very solid performance, and it is one of the things that really made the movie for me. 17 out of 20 on that one. I think that was one of the better elements of the film, and if that had suffered, everything else that was brilliant about it would have gotten drugged down with it. So that was awesome. Effects, I also gave a 17, and one of the big reasons I did that was creature design. There are creatures within the movie which I thought were very unique and terrifying. Um, I mean, aside from being noteworthy and discussion worthy and well acted and well rounded and having great subtext, in my opinion, uh, the movie really got me in terms of scares. And the creatures were a significant portion of that. It especially set the tone right from the beginning. It told you in the first 5 minutes what kind of movie this was going to be, and it didn't really let up. So 17 points to that. And all the blood and the gore and so forth were done very, very well. All of the bodily fluid, what have you, shots were very convincing. And so, I mean, that takes me around the corner to the fear quotient. And like I said, this movie did get me. There were portions of it that had jump scares that worked really well. And this is one of the things that anthology horror works really well at when it does succeed, is it provides different tonal elements to the movie through the use of different directors, through the use of different writers, through the use of different storylines. It can change the tone on a dime and still be effective with both, or in this case, all five. And so, there were jump scares that worked really well, and then in a tonal shift that makes sense because it is anthology. There were parts of it that were really squeamish, really tough to take. There were parts that really put you on edge. You knew something was off, but you couldn't figure out what. And something was happening to these characters, that there was a dark presence going on, and that was put on with bright sunshiny smile, and you just knew that something was behind the smile. That did a really good job with the suspensefulness there. So fear quotient, I gave this a 15. There were times that I jumped. There were times that I was biting my nails. Overall, very, very solid. So this is the reason I wanted to review this, is because I did enjoy this so much, and I still don't hear a whole lot of people talking about it. And from what I'm reading on like the IMDb reviews, it is a very polarizing movie. So I can't promise you'll have the same experience. All I can do is make my recommendations based on my opinions. And if you disagree with them, I'm going to have more opportunity to discuss why I feel the way I feel about this movie in the deep dive discussion. And that'll also be a great place if you want to leave comments. But moving on, the overall total score brings it up to 81 out of a possible 100 points. This video is running a little long, so I am going to cut it off. Look for the deep dive discussion. I'm going to go into a lot more detail there. I'm not going to worry so much about the time element there. But that was Southbound. That was my take on it. And next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.